I'm Joanna.
And I'm Sophia.
I'm Jay.
Thank you for coming on. And we just want to interview you a little bit about your job in the film industry.
I went to NYU. I studied at the Tisch School of the Arts, and then I went to Strasberg, Lee Strasberg Theater Institute for a while. I went to HB Studio for a while, and then the last studio I was at was the Barrow Group, which I think is like the greatest studio. Basically, I've been acting and writing since I was in junior high. Teachers back in 4th grade saw that I had an affinity, like that I just really appreciated TV. I liked storytelling. I gravitated towards movies, And there was a playwriting competition when we were in the 7th grade that me and 2 other students won, and real equity actors from New York City came out to East Hampton, which is where I grew up, to actually produce these plays for us, which was just such an eye-opening experience. I started to figure it out, and I was starting to get some management and starting to get representation. Then I got sick. I had like a tumor in my ear, paralyzed me for years. It took me a long time to kind of get back into it, to be able to enunciate words and to be able to just feel confident to say words that began with the letter F. The last 6-7 years, I felt like I'd finally kind of come around on being able to enunciate correctly and be able to kind of adapt. I got in a national commercial with the Golden Corral, which was a lot of fun and a big deal. In terms of auditions, I don't ever miss auditions. I'm never late to auditions. I show up happy. I don't show up with like an agenda, like I got to get out of there. I get so excited and so pumped and enthusiastic about going to an audition, because to me, I look at it as like a free class. And because of it, casting directors in New York City, they like know me and like want to see me. And it's just, I think that's a very important part of like the whole thing, is treat it like it's really a profession, and treat people with respect, and show like that you're willing to be flexible and bend, and almost like any other job, like you're going to get a little bit more attention because of it. Rejection part of it is just a reality. It's like a bureaucracy of people that ultimately you have to get through in order to get to the one person that's going to make the decision. They could be going through tape after tape after tape of this guy or that guy or that guy, and he could drop his sandwich when you're up there doing the best part of your audition, and he just doesn't have time to go back, and for whatever reason, maybe you just don't quite look like what he was expecting in his head or her head, or for that matter. But for me, I just take that stuff and I compartmentalize it somewhere, because it just doesn't matter. It's stuff that's beyond my control. But I go in and give it everything I have all the time. And basically, the last 6-7 years, I've booked at least something like a year, at least something. And the last couple of years, just being able to get SAG and be able to get union finally has been super gratifying. And I've got all kinds of other writing projects that are like helping kind of supplant that. And I think that's a big part of the whole thing is, when nobody's coming to you with offers or stuff to do, you have to take every opportunity to do on your own. Bottom line is, people want to work with people that are creative and open to doing whatever it takes to make whatever it is you're working on better. And the fact that you're working on it is the main thing. Saying no to stuff is just, you don't want to box yourself out, especially when you don't really have, you're not in a position to really or should be doing so. I'll say this, about bodyguarding and restaurants, and how it correlates and helps me with either acting or writing. First of all, I've seen so many different things that it's easy for me to dip into a well and kind of come up with story ideas or bridge story gaps, because I've seen it. I've seen stuff that you just can't write. I mean, bodyguarding is definitely one of the funnest jobs I've ever had, because I saw parts of the country that I never would have ever seen. Also, places like Fresno and Cincinnati, and parts of Idaho and Iowa. I mean, we have a beautiful country. Here we were on these big tour buses that had everything you could ever imagine in terms of TVs, and the beds themselves are super comfortable and whatnot. And I hear these celebrities coming on and off the bus, and they're hanging out with me as if I belong. When I went to Los Angeles, this is before cell phones and before really the internet. And like I was able to, I walked around Los Angeles, literally like from block to block asking for jobs. And I landed on the Troubadour, which is like an old club that's still there. That's where Elton John started. That's where Guns N' Roses broke. That's where Cheech and Chong made it. It's getting $7 an hour to get the crap kicked out of me, but also learn how to kick the crap out of other people. And I got pulled aside by the same guy that gave me this opportunity to work on the show I'm talking about right now. He pulled me aside, and he was working for Alyssa Milano at the time, and said, "Hey, what's your name? This and that and the other thing." And we ended up becoming best friends. And I went on tour with David Lee Roth with him. I worked for Brooke Shields. I was Paris Hilton's nighttime bodyguard when she blew up, when The Simple Life was like, he was during the day, I was at night. Like, with the first season of The Simple Life, bodyguarding, there's so many times where I've had to make things go away where I didn't necessarily know how. Go somewhere in my head, to have that sort of resolute calmness and in order to be able to take care of the situation. So there's a certain amount of putting on an air. And I think that that's the same thing with working in a restaurant, especially being a server or a bartender for that matter, because whether you want to think of yourself as a salesperson or not, you're trying to get people to buy stuff. How do you get them to buy stuff you have to be a little enthusiastic. You have to believe in what it is what you want them to buy. And I've looked at working in restaurants as an opportunity. Both jobs definitely helped me in ridiculous ways. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from an uncle of mine, from years ago when I was 16, 17, 18. He was doing commercials, and he was just think about, when you're reading a scene with your character in it, what were you doing 5 minutes before the scene? Work yourself into and up to wherever that point in the scene is. That actually worked for me because it just made me it made me think about this person. On the same token, you don't want to effectuate how you say things necessarily in a way that's unbelievable. Just say the words. Try not to put anything on the words. Just try to convey information and let the moments become what they're going to become. There's a lot of that may be easier said than done, because if you're going to do something that's wholly different than how you are, then whether with an accent or maybe a disability or it's an age thing, then you have to try to figure out something like a tick to replicate that. I've definitely been getting a lot of stuff lately that is way in line with stuff that I've done. As happy as I've been, I'm really looking forward to doing stuff that is going to broaden I feel what I could bring to the table. I did a PSA 6 years ago for drunk driving that you can find, I think, somewhere online. It was a real commercial. I get into a cab, and the cab driver starts to drink alcohol as he's drinking and driving. They had me. I was in an actual 8th Avenue cab. They had all these other real people that they'd asked to react to this, and they weren't reacting. They were just so terrified. The guy is like, "Okay, where are you going?" And I'm going to 102nd Street and Broadway, and he's like, "Okay, cool." They're in the back seat, it's interesting to me, just the reality of that, that people inherently, people really don't want any trouble. They're kind of doing cost benefit analysis in their head. If I yell at this guy while he's driving me in Manhattan, who knows what's going to happen, even though he's drinking from a flask. So they brought me in to get an actual reaction. And that was fun because all I know is I got in the car and he's like, "So where are you going?" I tell him where, and he starts drinking, and I was just like, "So what are you doing right there, man?" And he's just like nothing. I was like, "No, what is that? What is that right now?" He's like, "Calm down." I was like, "Don't tell me to calm down. Is that a beer?" "Yo, chill out, man." I was just, give me it. I went through the window and grabbed it. I get out of the car in the middle of 8th Avenue, right by Penn Station. I'm cursing him out. All of 8th Avenue is what the? As I start walking away, the cab driver, who's an actor, he's just like. That it can be so fun. Anytime that there's a collaborative process where you're trusted, so fun. A long time ago, a chef. I used to be a chef, and the chef that taught me the most about food and cooking and whatnot, because I ran his kitchen. I was a sous chef, and he pulled me aside. He said, "There's one thing that you do really, really well, and I've tried to incorporate this in everything that I've ever done since then.
And I think that this is a big part of like the creative process in particular, because it's so personal to people. It's hard for it not to be personal. You know, you're tapping into something that's like part of your imagination, and you know, and that is just inherently, intrinsically personal to you. You know, to me was, he's like, what I like is you talk to everybody differently, you know, in order to get them to bring out the best in them. And I think that that's a key deal when, like, you know, getting into a creative environment with people, because some people need a certain amount of like tough love. Most people really don't. They just need things worded in a certain way. Like, you know, they need to be propositioned rather than told, because that allows them to feel free enough to like to keep trying. The last thing you want is for someone to shut down. Like even right now, like working on a project with two of my friends, like underneath the umbrella of some other friends, like we're like round the clock doing this, that, and the other thing, and we're very, very, very keen on not just saying I don't like that. We don't say things like that because it's not gonna be effective in the long run. Then there's no reason to be like wholly negative. But it's a hard thing to do because there are deadlines. You know, so like as the deadlines, like, you know, bring the worst of us out, or sometimes the best. But yeah, I would definitely practice as much as you can within talking to people as in the best way possible for them to do what you think that they need to do.
Yeah, that's all the questions we have. So,
Yeah.
is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I really appreciate this. It's I mean, like it's really fun to like talk about it all. I mean, it's the meaning. It's a part of the meaning of life for me. I mean, like I feel like, you know, this is what makes my world go around. So I really appreciate like being able to share it with you guys.